Hi, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger here. You're listening to the Zach and Andy Show, episode 2. So put that cookie down and turn the music up and roll the damn theme tune.
Zach and Andy Show, the only place to go to hear a couple of guys giving shitty advice about the music industry.
Hello, I'm Andy Gillion.
And I'm Zach 9.
And welcome back to episode 2.
Numero 2.
Of the Zach and Andy Show. My God, we actually made another one of these.
I know. It's been a bit of an interesting time. And I'm not sure why we're still here, but Andy, you might be able to take that one out.
I have no idea either, Zach. I think it has something to do with making millions from these streams, as we touched on in the last episode, which if you missed it, go back and check it out. So we talked all about Spotify.
And streaming and how you can make it work for you and why it's actually a good thing if you take the time to do it properly.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what have we got in store for today? It's episode 2. We've got to hit them with a banger. You know, we're coming out of the blocks now. I think the last episode was quite close to my heart and I felt a little bit emotional during it. We're talking about, you know, basically getting screwed by, you know, the industry in numerous ways, although we will touch more on that. I think I could have brought more energy to the table, but it was just a little bit like, all I could think about was, God damn, I'm getting screwed left, right, and center here. But today I'm going to try and up the game. We've had a coffee, and we've had about two
cups of tea already.
Well, no, two teapots.
Yeah, that's true.
We went super authentic. We brought the teapot out.
We did,
which I don't do.
Yeah.
I just dangle the tea bag in there, leave him for a few minutes.
You just dangle it, do you?
Well, not just dangle. I give him a stir. I press the tea bag up against the inside of the mug a few times. But bringing in the teapot, I thought really added some
authenticity.
Well, I think it added some class, which was much needed to this podcast,
especially to us as individuals. That's for sure.
Individuals, and I think our friendship suffered without the teapot, and now I think we're new men. So let's move forward.
Yeah,
what are we talking about today?
So this episode is going to be quite a different one from the first one. We just figured we'd just throw it out there and just be like, hey, we're gonna do something with a bit of an interesting twist. This one is, are genres necessary? And that in itself is a very loaded question. So yeah,
loaded.
Loaded indeed. And I mean, I'm not thinking, you know, like loaded like some kind of weapon. I'm just thinking loaded as in there's so many different factors to think about when you're actually saying something like that. But let's kick it off and just think to yourself, and discuss. You say, are genres necessary? Well, I mean,
what is a genre, Zach?
What is a genre, and why do they even exist?
Yeah, I mean, is it just segregation, further segregation of musicians? Is it just...
is it a way of pigeonholing creativity?
Yes.
You know?
Or does the limit of genre actually breed creativity? I've heard some people claiming that the more limited you are, the easier it is to create. And I kind of understand that when you put a wall around what you're doing, there's definitely more focus.
That's for sure. That's for sure. But I mean, I think you know, it's interesting because as somebody who doesn't really like to limit myself to a genre when it comes to the creation of my own
sexual partners. No, he's getting married soon.
I am getting married, so that's not very accurate.
Zach's
there,
left
Andy.
his dark past behind him. Now he's moved on. He's changed man. Let's move on as well with that. So we're talking about musical genres. What is a genre? Do we need them? You know, that kind of thing. Well, what is a genre? Well, a genre really to me is kind of a way of other people categorizing what musicians are doing. You know, I don't think at any point the musicians said, this is the classical period of music. This is the Baroque period. And I don't think anyone suddenly saw, someone with a violin, I don't think went, oh yeah, we're definitely in the classical era here.
No.
I don't think anyone, I don't know, what do you think the first pop, like the first pop song that ever was released, what would that have been, do you think?
Well, it's interesting you say that because a lot of people would argue that there was a large amount of music in the 60s that actually could be classed as pop now.
The Beatles, I think.
Yeah, the Beatles were definitely they popularized music, which is where the term pop music really comes from. Because if you're thinking about it, on a global scale, there wasn't that many artists, and I'm talking on a global scale generally within, sort of, I guess you could say the UK, Europe, Australia, America, and those are all the countries that sort of, generally speaking, followed a lot of the music from the Beatles in the time and the era that they were around. And then around the rest of the world, it sort of took a little bit longer to sort of hit that stride.
Do you know what? I really wish we'd actually prepared something for this podcast, because now I'm starting to remember if we'd made some kind of timeline of genres. Because I think if you take music as far back as is known, genre-wise, I think like the first real musicians were, you're talking Italians. I think you're going back. I mean, we're not talking caveman kind of singing or something. I think there's always been some sort of form of music.
You're talking sort of like...
I'm talking Paganini and things like that. So really early Baroque. And
then I guess but then you can also think there was a lot of traditional music as well. That's sort of very...
And I think religion probably has a huge part to play in the rise of music as a popular art form.
Because obviously there was a lot of music, whether or not it had any vocals or it was just music itself, that's associated with different rituals, different different things for different countries and different nationalities.
Yeah, I mean,
different
probably
ethnicities.
To begin with, it would have just been vocals. You look back, and I think used as a tool for religion in many ways. And then it's all, and then you've got the after the classical period. I think you had some sort of Renaissance thing. You had the Chopin stuff. And then you go into like the early 1900s. You got like the swing. I think when people started to just chill out a bit and try and bring in a bit of jazzy swing.
Kind of. It's interesting though, because swing and jazz and blues was also a bit was very rebellious at the time, because the whole thing about it was that because blues came from the South in America, it was very rebellious by nature, but there was also
but it has very blues actually has very strong ties to African music.
It does,
It's got the call and response stuff going on.
Obviously, all the rhythmic aspects as well.
There's a ton of stuff borrowed there. We probably don't know enough, but I like to pretend that we do for a little bit longer.
I think we both have experience when it comes to blues, probably from our past in learning guitar.
I still love playing blues. I still love Gary Moore and all the great blues guitar players.
I mean, I was never as, I guess, focused on blues, but I always used to really enjoy playing, it's a bit cliche to say, but, my 12-bar blues things. It's
classic stuff.
Classic stuff, yeah. But
you said about rebellious.
Yes.
Right? So blues in its nature is rebellious because you play a blue note, which is a wrong note, essentially. So you're playing the scale that everyone else adheres to. Then you throw in a blue note, which is outside of the scale, but it's like cheeky enough. Like, this is a weird thing. I was trying to explain this to someone like a couple of days ago, is that inside music, you almost have a separate commentary going on where you can hit wrong notes and it can almost be cool. Like, it's cool. It was laid back. It's rebellious to hit that note. And it's rebellious to play slightly behind the beat of the drummer, relaxed. So in jazz and stuff, there's a phrase like make the drums, you push the drums.
Yeah,
so the drummer will be pushing. He'll be going slightly ahead of everyone else and you create things like that.
It creates a lot of tension, but it also, pushing ahead of the beat with the drums forces the rest of the band to try and follow, but it depends on what they're trying to do. I mean, you might have a bass player who's really sitting in the pocket, which is another term that's thrown around all the time.
Yeah.
And that's, you've got a drummer who's pushing ahead of the beat, bass player who's sitting in the pocket, and then all of a sudden you've got this guitar player who is basically dancing around what the drummer and the bass player are doing, complementing them, but also trying to provide a little bit of dissonance as well in places.
And how lazy are swing singers? You take Frank Sinatra, he is never on the beat. And I try and explain this to my vocalist in my band. I explained to him that we've gone into the studio and I've listened to what he's done, and I've said, can you just try and be just a fraction lazy? And sometimes we'll shift the vocals slightly back when we realize that it can be too on the beat sometimes. And then you bring an attitude to the music when you have this lazy vocal. It's usually the vocals I like to hear sitting back a little bit behind, because it's just, you don't want the song to sound rushed.
No, you don't. And I mean, it's pretty common when you've got somebody in the studio with a vocalist that the best thing is always just to make sure that, because there's different ways of editing a vocalist and getting them to sort of sit in the right spot. Ideally, you would have them perform and pull it off. But the realities of what the expectations are for modern music, which in itself is a whole interesting thing to discuss, and we'll run through that in a separate podcast. But the expectation of the perfect sound that people will create versus the reality of what is humanly possible to do is very different. But having a vocalist sit just behind the beat, and when we mean just, we're talking about...
Most people won't notice. I'm talking like...
It's very, very, very minor.
It's like a psychological thing.
But it's more about the feel of what... Putting the vocal in that particular place within the beat actually delivers. It's like listening to a song, and you hear a song like it might be, say for instance, a metal song, and at the start of the breakdown they'll put a sub drop in there versus one where they'll automate the bass up instead. And the difference between the two of them is so minor, but it's about what you feel. Which becomes an emotional response, which is why it's so successful. Hence the reason why having a vocalist sitting just behind the beat, or a bass player playing in the pocket, or a drummer rushing the beat ended up becoming something that was so utilized in those genres, because it just really, really made people feel something.
Yeah, it has its own voice, and I think that's what starts to happen with music. Is you got to really ask yourself, what is music? What are you wanting to hear? Why am I writing? Let's say I predominantly write metal, right? Why am I going with the same thing every time? A drummer, guitar left, guitar right.
A lead guitar,
a vocalist, usually, bass, guitar in the middle, maybe some synths. Why is it always that same thing, pretty much across all genres and pop even? So even when you've just got a vocalist and synths, you've still got synths recreating the sound of a drum kit. So we're still using the staple archetypal song structure within itself, which is, drums, bass, guitar, vocals, probably another synth. In pop music, I think they have no more than 4 different instruments. Usually they try and really rein it in.
And I mean, the real exception to that, of course, is when you start to get into the realm of electronic music, where that is a whole different kind of thing.
True, but it's still, you're still going to hear a drum beat. You're still going to hear bass of some description, and you're still going to hear melody on top.
A melody line,
It's like a cake, and the cakes they're more or less always the same structure.
I mean, you could talking about the difference between a regular cake and a vegan cake and a dairy-free cake or whatever. They're still utilizing a flour agent, a binding agent, and some kind of fat agent.
What happens when we start to branch away or jump to the next thing, where we go, do you know what? I don't need to emulate a drum beat anymore. I don't need rhythm, or I don't need that kind of rhythm going on. I don't know what the next thing is, but it's interesting to think, is there some new genre of music that's going to come along that's just, it's not that same drum bass melody thing. It's something completely different, where they go, I don't need to copy because that's what genres are. They're evolution of each other, right?
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking about the evolution of genres, and coming along something along those lines. You know, taking it back to talking about blues and jazz and swing. You know, and I'm not sure which one came first, but all three of them are very, very closely related to each other. But the next thing that turned up was rock and roll. And rock and roll is somewhat of a combination of swing and blues, but just there was a lot more.
There was attitude, and that's when things get interesting, because no more is the listener or the composer writing or listening for the melodies or necessarily anymore. So it's not you're not telling a story with melody necessarily.
No.
What you're doing is the genre becomes less about the music and more about the attitude and more about what you're trying to say about a personality. Who are you? Like the artist of, I don't know, I can't think of any. Well, Elvis, right? We'll take Elvis.
Yeah.
That guy's coming on stage wearing like the full tassely velvet gear. This guy,
he had the big hair.
He's got the big hair. He's got the chest hair coming out. He's got like rolled up coins in to make it look like he's got a huge schlong. This guy is packing, right? And he's packing out venues. The girls are going crazy. He's just going crazy. This guy's going crazy. Do you
He's
think
an
that's
icon.
really about the music? It's not. This guy is selling albums because, you know, girls are going crazy for him.
And it's quite different from the Beatles. I mean, people fell in love with the Beatles because they had such an incredible sound and they created...
Well, I think for them it was the simple, catchy melodies primarily, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, the catchy melodies and the hooks.
Yeah.
I mean, every single
Memorable
song,
songs.
they were all memorable songs. Elvis definitely has memorable songs. And he's a great singer, and he was a great, he's a great songwriter. He had obviously great songwriters he worked with, but he wasn't focused always on the hook. And that's the difference between what happens when you start with, when you go from Elvis and then you jump to the Beatles, and then all of a sudden it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, because you compare classical music, which is fairly broad, but everyone's just... There's like metal music and classical music are very alike because it's a very elitist thing. It's very like showing off, really. You're showing off as being as difficult as you can. You're playing as difficult stuff as you can. Chopin would write his music in like E flat because it's the hardest key to play piano in. He would write insane. He would make it almost, I think, it is just making it harder to show off. And I do the same, guilty of the same thing with music, although I try and actually play meaningfully. Sometimes I'll write a riff which works and I'll go, it just isn't that hard to do. So are people going to really be impressed? Maybe I need to write something more difficult. I'm almost ashamed to write something basic.
And I think that is probably the big contrast between how you approach, I guess, composition when music versus me. Because to be frank, if I can find a way to make a complicated riff sound like something that somebody is going to really is going to be very memorable, then I'll keep it. But otherwise, if things are simple but they are very, very effective, I'll keep it.
Yeah, I mean, you should if it works and if it fits the song and it's serving the purpose of the song. Yeah.
It's all about hitting play and just sitting back and realizing that if you feel something, it's good. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to feel something like, wow, that riff sounds tough, as in tough to play. It might be, wow, that riff sounds tough, as in it sounds like,
empowering.
And
we should probably touch on that eventually as well.
We will. But I think I like the train we're going through, where we're sort of rolling through the different genres, moving on, because the cool thing to think about is that rock and roll, was obviously a fantastic thing to start with, because really that was somewhat of the birthplace of where the music that we are both a part of.
I suppose it was. I mean, you think about the guitar. Oh, is that where they started to distort the guitar for the first time?
Yes.
So you took, Sinatra's guitarist probably was playing through a clean amp.
Yeah.
And suddenly someone just cranked the gain. Obviously, it doesn't sound as insane as it does now.
Well,
but
what they initially used to do was, because they didn't have the ability to add all of the gain to the amplifiers they did back then, they would just turn the amplifiers to maximum.
Yes, it would be so hot that it would be almost
distorting.
clipping.
It would be
the hell
clipping
yeah.
out of it, and that was the classic Jimi Hendrix sound.
Yes,
Because he would always have Marshalls on 10
Yeah.
playing a left-handed Fender that was slightly
didn't have the
out
double
of
humbucker thing.
yeah.
going on,
He was playing single coils. His guitar was slightly out of tune, but he could play it in tune.
Mm-hmm.
Was
Why is that? Why did he do that?
it just because
Yeah, look at me do it. I'm so good. I'm going to just untune my guitar and I'm still going to hit the notes.
I think it's just because he had played left-handed guitars and he tuned normal guitars left-handed, so they weren't actually designed to be tuned that way properly.
I wonder because I started to talk about when music progressed or evolved, or even what's the opposite of progressed?
Regressed?
I suppose, regressed in terms of I don't want to say quality, but in terms of complexity from the classical kind of stuff, which is just mental.
Yes.
I'm talking, writing music for 100 violinists, and then you dumb it down to the Beatles, and not saying the quality isn't good, but like the complexity of the music isn't so complex, obviously. And you just you start to almost cover up the lack of complexity with an attitude or
an emotion.
You're putting something across which isn't necessarily musical, but comes from the music. And it's really interesting that music has become simpler, and yet there's so much more now to do with music. You're not putting on an album to listen necessarily to the notes. You're listening to get some kind of feeling, some kind of reaction.
Or the message as well. And I mean, we haven't even touched lyrics, on anything involving lyrics and just how, we go from... A good way of thinking about it is this, right?
Yeah.
We go from rock and roll, and then straight away from rock and roll, there's two genres of music that merged not quite at the same time, but similar periods of time, and that's heavy metal and punk. Mm-hmm. And both heavy metal and punk, especially punk, was really about the attitude and the message that the people were saying, and literally what they were saying in the lyrics.
Actually.
And the musicianship was somewhat thrown out the window.
Exactly. This is what I mean. Yeah, this is what I mean. That punk probably is the prime example of when someone went, "Fuck it, I want to give this message. Mm-hmm. This is how I'm going to do it,
and I'll play really fast, and I do not care."
Yeah, loud, fast, kind of
loud, fast, and angry,
and I mean, probably not sounding that great if it's
really. They didn't care though.
No,
that was the point. That was the point.
It was supposed to sound loud and not good.
And I mean, I still feel very strongly about this, that I would say that punk was definitely, after blues, it was probably the first, genre that came back to being super rebellious, because in its nature, the whole image of punk was being a rebel.
Look at the Sex Pistols, slamming on the Queen and everything. They were so offensive for that time, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's interesting because I would say at that point in time, the split, not the split from rock and roll, but the difference, because it's not a split, because you could argue that punk and heavy metal are very closely tied together.
Yeah.
But the movement from rock and roll to punk and rock and roll to heavy metal would easily be the big difference between you and I.
Right.
Because I would say that obviously your background is a lot more within the heavy metal side of things, and mine is a lot more within the punk things, but then it's a lot more, gets very blurred as more modern music gets involved.
Yeah.
Because the crossover between the two genres is quite heavy, especially in current heavy music as well.
Yeah. Oh, there's ton. Everyone's borrowing from everyone. That's why, for me, genre elitism, the segregation. People saying, "Oh, I can't listen to, one subgenre of metal." So I don't know. Oh, I can't listen to metalcore. That's for pussies. But I listen to doom metal. And it's like how can you generalize a genre and hate on a genre so much when they all borrow so much from each other?
Well, it's like somebody, and I know people who go, I will listen to grindcore, but I'm not interested in hardcore.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I will listen to grindcore, but I'm not interested in hardcore. I'm gonna say, Do you realize that the similarities between those?
Yeah, I think honestly, unfortunately, the metal industry is the worst. The metal,
community.
Yeah, is the worst offender for it. I think in terms of just being so elitist, being so tied to their own subgenre and hating on everything else because it's not heavy enough or it's not whatever enough. Yeah, it's a shame, I think, that people can't just kind of enjoy music from all genres. Good music, I think, spans genre. I don't think you need to have any kind of divide.
You don't.
Really.
And I think, so an interesting thing, we'll probably jump ahead a bit because it's pretty easy once you sort of get past heavy metal and punk to sort of see where all of these genres that are associated with modern music have stemmed along to. Cutting forward to, I guess, today, there's many, many, many subgenres that people will throw in there. But when it comes down to it, there's a lot of music that really utilizes, 3, 4, sometimes up to 7 or 8 genres that people will say within their styles of, within their music and their composition. I mean, you could look to, I guess you could say, bands such as like, I don't know.
Metallica. Metallica, heavy metal band.
Thrash.
There's even, they even went kind of country at one point. They went
country and they went hard rock.
They went hard rock. They threw everything in. And I kind of, as a composer, I think maybe that inspired me as a young composer. That you're blown away when you listen to like songs like One or Fade to Black or stuff where it's so dynamic. You have this crazy classical intro and then suddenly it goes heavy and then maybe in the middle it drops out and it has clean guitars and I'm like, oh my, every song I wrote when I was 12 had this crazy midsection which was clean guitars. And even like on my upcoming solo album that I'm doing, plug. That's exactly the same again. I try to write very dynamically and span whatever. I don't care about genres, really. Just bring those walls down and write from the heart, write what sounds good to you, because you don't necessarily need to stick to a genre. I really think that limitation, for me at least, hinders me. And I don't like having the voice in the back of my head saying that's not heavy enough or that's not fast enough or that's not difficult enough to do.
And I think that's probably stemmed directly from, as you say, that I don't know whether or not, I wouldn't say that you are somebody that I associate with it, but that I guess you could say somewhat genre elitism that has come from other people that you've met within the heavy music community who've either put that on you or mentioned that online.
I'm guilty in some cases, but
maybe
I think in my later years, I don't know if I can say that. No, but I've come around to just being like, it's just, life is too short to be turning down an entire catalog of music from one genre because you think that your genre is better.
And I mean, it doesn't help that now you spend so much time hanging around me and I'm, always just being like, listen to this poppy band or listen to this thing.
I enjoy writing R&B stuff with my vocalist in the UK, Christina Marie. We're writing, we're writing some kind of R&B metal crossover album at the moment. It's insane that we can do that. And I'm like, actually, this is a lot of fun. I think for me as a composer, I get bored not trying something new. I want to see, I wonder if I could write a song like, Boys to Men or something, or I wonder if I can write, classical music. I've always kind of written a bit of classical music, but I don't know why people feel the need to limit themselves.
No.
Much,
and
really.
I think it's funny because I honestly think the biggest challenge is actually writing a good pop song. Because that, to me, I mean...
That is an interesting thing to say.
It is an interesting thing because I would say that between the two of us, that's probably one of the styles of music that we've yet to, I guess... Conquer is not really the word, but...
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we could say we've conquered anything. We're doing we're doing a podcast like this, but we're not rich from what we're doing music wise. So I can't say that's not, you shouldn't base conquering music on the money.
I say be more, would be best thing to say would be accomplished in the particular
in that
style.
field.
In that field. And it's not that I don't think that, I personally think I would be able to produce, pop quite well, because at the end of the day, the composition side of things is somewhat similar to a lot of the things that I do, especially considering how many hooks are involved. But I know that how we look at the composition of music, to me, I think it would be a great challenge to try and actually do something.
Yeah, you're stepping out of your comfort zone. But I do have to say that going back to the elitist thing and hating on other genres, I mean, I'm so guilty of hating on pop music, as most metal people are. But the reason is that it's like comparing, if you talk about it, genres like food, right? So genres of music like different types of food. To me, a really good progressive metal track is or a classical piece where it's complicated, it's complex, really well thought out music. When it's done well, that to me is a gourmet meal. And you put the radio on and you hear the same 4 songs in any given month, because that's apparently all
it's
the average. There's all your average pop listener, let's say your average person in their car, the mainstream musical idiot who doesn't know anything about music, doesn't give a shit about music, but just needs background noise. That's McDonald's. The pop music is McDonald's, man. I love McDonald's, but my God, man, you go up there, you're lucky if you get the order right. Comes out that it's been thrown together by 16-year-olds. They're missing ingredients. There's only 3 ingredients. They're still screwing it up. It's not quality in any way. You know that going in. It's damn good, but you know that going in, Zach.
Yeah, but
that is not quality food.
No. And I think the interesting thing to note though is that I would very strongly say that is obviously not true for all pop.
It's not true for all pop.
And there are a lot of current artists out there who are actually still creating incredible music. And the thing to note is that I would say that statement is more accurate when you're talking about your run-of-the-mill popularized artist and it could be pop, and it's probably quite true to say that popular music is what we're saying when we say pop music. So it could be hip-hop, it could be rock, it could be R&B, or it could be pop rock.
What I mean is I'm so unimpressed as a listener to what I hear in the mainstream. It actually disgusts me to hear those 4 chords. I mean, everyone knows about that. The axis of evil or whatever they call them. Those 4 chords that are used for every single song that's ever basically been written in the pop industry, and it actually makes me feel sick. I have to turn it off. I can't listen to it. It's nauseating that they're getting away with writing the same song over and over again. And if you wanted, honestly, I could write a number 1, I think, but this is another thing that I could write the music for the number 1, but I don't know how the person should dress. I don't know what we should call the person. This is marketing, yeah? So the music is no longer really important.
Well,
as important as the marketing strategy.
It depends on what you're talking about in respect to pop as well, because I would say that between the current styles of popularized music, depending upon what it is, there's a dramatic difference between the level of performance that is required and whether or not the composition needs to be seriously backed up. Because if you're looking at somebody like a classic example, which has been current for a couple of years, if you're looking for someone like Taylor Swift or Ed Sheeran, right? To do what they actually do in terms of the vocal delivery on some of their songs, it's not something that can be replicated by somebody unless they have an incredible amount of skill. That is quite accurate. And in terms of what is going on in terms of the composition. Some of it is simple, some of it is not so simple. But then if you're moving into it's some different styles of more popularized music, especially some things involving hip hop, then it comes and hip hop could be, it's very broad as well. There's a lot of different subgenres, just as many as there are in metal.
Yeah.
It's just something that you and I aren't very familiar with. But with a lot of those artists, it is very much all about the image. That is literally what drives the large amount of those genres, not all of them.
Yeah, and exactly. The musical input becomes diluted by the fashion, the genre itself.
And the identity of the actual person.
And who you're selling the music to. So you're selling it to the young kids. Yes, this person up on the stage has to be cool, has to be, appealing. Sexually appealing as well, which is another big kind of thing to me. And
it's kind of like whether or not how
thing to me, nice, but a big thing like that I've noticed.
Yeah.
Which is just like how sexualized the music industry is. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was just going to say it's whether or not that should actually be a relevant thing to make the music successful, because you throw that like over to the side of heavy music. A great example of a very popular band within heavy music would be Five Finger Death Punch.
Right.
They're a stadium level hard rock / metal band.
Right.
This band, nobody in the band is particularly good looking.
No.
They're,
So that's not important for that genre.
No, but it's not important because they have really kick-ass songs and they have a great message and they have an incredible vocalist.
Yeah, and the message isn't look at my tits.
No, it's not. Or look at how jacked I am, Yeah.
Or
whatever.
So, yeah, or look how rich I am.
Exactly, that's true. That's
which is another thing. So yeah, I mean, I've hated on pop music a lot of my life. But then again, my favorite artist of all time is Michael Jackson.
Exactly.
AKA King of Pop. So
it does kind of make you a bit of a hypocrite.
Absolutely. But I would like to kind of defend myself in saying that kind of backs up my point that you can hate music from every genre and you can love music from every genre. And you don't need to only like one or hate only hate one, or vice versa. You really can. I mean, is it down to taste completely? I think a lot of it, of course, is.
Yeah, no,
mathematically,
definitely.
It gets very messy if you're trying to talk about what's good mathematically. When you have these robots trying to imitate Mozart now and writing sonatas and stuff.
I think
what makes a good song, Zach?
Well, it's all about what it stirs the emotions in people.
Yeah.
And emotions are delivered, that different, I mean, you're talking about different intervals create different sonic patterns.
Right.
And then there's different psychological responses to the brain. I mean, it's interesting because I've actually had a little bit of experience understanding the psychology behind that. Thanks to my partner, she's actually she works in the industry where she understands the psychology of music. So that's a whole different kind of interesting thing, and it's getting quite off topic when it comes to talking about genres. But it's scientific fact that different intervals in music will create a different emotional response in people.
Yeah, and then you end up having the fashion or the trend where those melodies or those styles or those intervals become a staple of that genre.
Exactly.
So, for example, metal, heavy metal,
yes,
any kind of subgenre of that, it's all minor key, pretty much.
Most of it, yeah.
It's all got some dark attitude to it, some kind of morbid feel a lot of the time, or it's powerful. Not often is it, some nice happy little tune going on in a major key. That limits the genre of metal a huge amount, actually.
It does. And it's interesting because that's a really easy, quick way to segue into a different style of music that's associated with the heavy music industry.
Go on.
Which doesn't get associated with metal that much, but has been utilized to popularize both a cross between it and metal, and that is pop punk. Because in itself, the whole reason why it's called pop punk is punk roots, utilizing pop melodies and pop choruses, utilizing major key performances combining major key with minor key. And voila, you have pop punk. And then you have bands. A great example of a band would be A Day to Remember. They are one of the largest bands in the sort of heavier music, popularized heavier music scene.
Yeah.
They are in themselves a rock band, a metal band, and a pop punk band all in one.
Yeah.
And they utilize a large amount of minor key influence with the way that they write their songs. And then they will just jump in a really dramatic musical way and just jump from one genre to another within the space of 4 bars. And then they'll go to, in some cases, they'll go to like an R&B hip hop kind of thing for another thing. That's a great example of a band that does not give a shit about genres.
And I applaud them, actually. Yeah, because I try to do that. I think when I write for Mors Principium Est, my band, I'm very pigeonholed into what I can do. We've had that discussion. We want to retain the sound that the band is known for. I think there would be some backlash if I threw in a middle 8 pop section or some gospel kind of backing vocals. I think there would be a bit of a backlash. And I don't particularly blame the listeners for that, because our kind of our fan base is I think we have a really good kind of hardcore fan base. We're an underground, in the real grand scheme of things, we're an underground metal band.
Yeah.
And we have incredible fans, really dedicated to the music, definitely not the image. I mean, we have no image. It's just never been important.
Well, because it's not important, and that's a great. That's a great difference, obviously, between your music and something that's a lot more popularized.
And I'm looking right now. I don't know if the cameras pick it up. If you are watching this on YouTube rather than listening on Spotify, because we are filming this too, I can see at the corner of my eye you have a framed photo of the Beatles.
Yes, that's my partners. Yeah,
right. So what are they dressed? They're dressed in suits. They're looking dapper. Those guys are they're smart chaps, right? Now compare that to punk or metal, where you're trying really to go against the grain. You're either dressing
it depends, I guess, in terms of what you're talking about in terms of punk, because when people refer to punk these days, there's so many different images involved with punk.
That's true. You've got the skater
you've got
kind
the
of
skater
crowd.
punk, you've got the pop punk.
But okay, let's say Sex Pistols versus the Beatles. Huge difference.
Massive difference.
The parents of the audience, they do not want their daughter bringing back one of those guys. But you look at the Beatles in that picture over there. I'd be proud to take Ringo Starr back to meet my mum.
And then you're talking about heavy metal, the great, a good example of somebody that you...
Let's dress in black and
Motley Crue.
And Motley Crue. How about Judas Priest? Because Rob Halford, right? Is he homosexual?
Yes, no, definitely.
Right.
Yeah, very much so.
So didn't that kind of image with all the metal studs and the leather, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that came from, he brought that in and everyone just went mad for it. Like everyone was just wild for this kind of crazy bondage shit. Yeah. So everyone's like, fucking right, this is the toughest shit. This is awesome. I'm going to go and wear leather and studs and all this stuff. But yeah, that's integrated into metal now. And I don't know. I've been told by a few people that that's where that originated from,
which I think is really cool.
Actually, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just interesting how a fashion can be brought in, becomes part of the attitude. Becomes a little bit political as well when you look back at Sex Pistols. They're fighting against the regime, and they're fighting. It all comes down, Zach, to humanity. The identity of people and groups of people. It all comes down to that. Associating music with yourself. It's an identity thing.
Yeah, and I think that's why you look at the different styles of music and you'll notice that it's very true with a lot of heavy music fans that if they do love a band and they do connect with the music, they get really, really, really close really fast because a lot of heavy music usually came from people who were outsiders.
Yeah.
Outsiders.
Absolutely.
And they were against the grain, and they were very much, they had a lot of, unfortunately, generally they were quite emotional. They had a lot of emotions to share, both in their lyrics and their music.
Yeah.
You know?
There's definitely, yeah, I think the mental health, or rather I should approach it in a different way. I would say that metal, I think there's been studies, honestly. I mean, it's obvious. If you're in the metal community, I think you can see it straight away that...
I'd say it's true for the punk community too.
Yeah, so...
Very much so. Because, could see punk,
but not just
emo and rock and all of that as well.
I was going to go from the angle that they are smarter people and they're more caring people generally.
Oh, yes.
You don't see if you see it from the outside and you look at a heavy metal guy walking down the street, maybe he's got the bondage gear on, etc. Right? This guy looks like he's going to do you and he's going to smash a ball over your head. You're going to run the other way, right? But the metal community, these people are empathetic, smart people who can think outside the box, can think for themselves, have chosen to listen to metal instead of pop, the mainstream thing that they've been spoon-fed their whole fucking life. They found something which is meaningful to them. It's a very tightly knit community in a way. It's so interesting.
It is, and I think it's quite true to say that people who listen to heavy music generally, scientifically, there's been a lot of studies to show that generally speaking, they're the people who usually end up going on to try and do a lot of higher education, and all of that kind of stuff. But the thing that's interesting is that a lot of people who listen to heavy music, and I, when I say heavy music, I don't just mean metal. Yeah. They know that there's a lot of, I guess you could say, a little bit of mental instability amongst the heavy music community. And so they know that their support is both the music and themselves. So there's a lot of really, really great institutions out there, who are behind, obviously trying to promote heavy music to help individuals. But also there's the reality that if you've got your crew at your gigs that you go to, they're there and everyone knows everyone else. Everyone knows.
You're a part of something, and that's
you're
where
a part of something. Yeah.
The genre thing becomes, like I said, like an identity, but you're in a community with a group of people.
It becomes like another family.
Yeah, you belong to it, and I feel attached to the metal community in that way.
Yeah, and I think I feel very attached to the metal community and the punk and hardcore community because I've sort of had the ability to sort of, at least within Melbourne, be part of both, which is somewhat of an interesting thing. But I think this is a good place for us to sort of have a bit of a commercial break now. We've been going on for a bit now.
We need that money from the advert. So let's throw a commercial on.
Yep.
Stay tuned, guys, and we will most likely talk even longer about this. What are we calling this one?
This one, genres necessary.
Genres necessary.
So far,
the question will be answered, folks, after this commercial break.
Indeed. Let's go.
I'll never forget that fateful night. My wife had left me, my boy had left me to join the armed forces, my sheep were all but gone. I was stood on top at bridge looking down, contemplating death, until I called Samaritan's hotline. I just went, ring, ring, and the woman answered and she says, "You're not contemplating jumping off, are you?" I said, "Yeah, I am." And she said, "Well, have you tried a country brew yet or what?" I said, "No, I haven't tried a country brew." And I did, and I said, "You know what, life's all right."
Country brew, getting you through since 1924. Well, that was a pretty nice commercial break, don't you think, Andy?
I had a great time, Zach.
You had a great time?
Yeah. Yes, I did. And we're back. We're back.
We are back. And we're still talking about genres necessary. And it's interesting to note that it's a pretty, as we said before, it's a pretty loaded question. But let's go a little bit more focused now in terms of specific musical things or phrases that we notice within different genres. And I'm talking about how you've got heavy music and how it likes to be very aggressive and very not aggressive in the same song.
Yeah, I think particularly like, the progressive metal stuff, but even just, heavy metal. I mean, we talk about Metallica. It's mentioned a little bit about, you've got all these soft sections and songs are very dynamic. You've got the balls to the wall metal stuff. And then you'll suddenly drop out and have this kind of classical almost section. And yeah, you see it a lot in metal music. You don't see the reverse very much in pop music. So you wouldn't really put on the radio and hear a pop song that's kind of chilled, and then suddenly it goes into a bunch of blast beats and distorted guitar. So why does it work the other way?
Because I wouldn't say that it doesn't work from pop to heavy music. But the thing to note is that it's become a lot easier for heavy bands because it's become more accessible for heavy bands to use pop melodies over the top of a lot of their heavier kind of sections, or softer kind of musical phrases as well. I mean, a good example is a band that many people would argue is a metal band,
right?
Would be Architects. And this is a band that has a lot of aggression in their music, but they also utilize a lot of sections in their music where they'll have these very beautiful ambient guitars, or sections that sound like they're literally made with synths, but it's just guitar that's been
the
reverbed
pitch shifty,
out.
clean guitar thing, the reverbs,
and this is a band that they utilize heavy vocals, they utilize singing, screaming, pitched screaming. That's all different kinds of things. They'll have sections where it's just drums and clean guitar, and they'll go from blast beat sections to non. To that kind of clean thing. But you look at that band, and I could say that I think that the guys in Architects could probably sit down and write a passably good pop song if they really wanted to.
But doesn't it just come down to the fact that metal is not agreeable to the public and is the outcast, and therefore you would never have pop music going metal, but you could have metal.
Well, you do have metal going pop,
coming back down to pop. And embracing, the softer side of stuff. I think definitely.
You do. I mean, it's already there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that Architects is maybe not exactly an example of a band that's fully going to pop, that's for sure. But there are a lot of bands that done that. I mean, I know I'm going to throw one out there that's a little left of center. It's a band that no longer exists, but they sure create a lot of controversy when they came out. But I'm talking about Attack right now, of course.
Right.
I don't know if you know them very well at all, but
not so well.
A good band. That's a very debatable thing by a lot of people, but I stand by it.
Go on.
Who were very well known for having full-on metalcore music associated with spouts of dance music and pop music in really extreme differences.
Yeah, I'm starting to think there are little crossovers, because isn't Skrillex like a metalcore guy?
Skrillex used to be from a post-hardcore emo band from First to Last.
And then you've got like Pendulum, who are bringing in some kind of hard rocky vibes as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I
mean, some of these artists are a little more somewhat dated for current things, but it's also good to note that like they are probably big influences on people who are crossing genres over now. But it's interesting to sort of think that for a band to go pop and to actually get out there and be known in the really large mainstream. And I mean, you could very much argue that there are a lot of heavy music bands or heavy artists that are very, very popular.
Yeah.
And that's true. And there are huge bands, like a great example of that is Slipknot. They are a massive global band, and they do have a lot of different subgenres of metal and rock that they span within their music. But you look at the difference between a band like Slipknot to an artist like Ed Sheeran, and how when one of those artists release a song versus when of the other one, and how much mainstream media will grab onto that and push that out there. That in itself is a great example of what Andy was saying, of where, like, if Slipknot were to create a pop song, which they certainly can if they wanted to, I don't
could
know
argue
that.
some of those choruses are pretty poppy in the latest stuff.
I mean, they are, but I
Yeah.
mean, I'm talking about a true, true
yeah.
pop song. If
Yeah.
they were to do that, I don't believe that the mainstream media would be there to
of course
support
not.
them behind
Look at
that.
them. They're not getting anywhere in the mainstream. Well, they are mainstream. They're mainstream metal. But you're talking about Taylor Swift stuff. I mean, no way are they going anywhere near
And
it.
that in itself is part of the problem, because I think that
And that's a big genre divide.
It is a
Because
big genre divide.
They're wearing masks. They're supposed to. They're big scary dudes, and that's their thing. And they probably wouldn't have it any other way. There'd probably be a huge backlash from the elitist fans who we're all a little bit elitist, I guess. But how about this for elitism, right? There's a website called nocleansinging.com.
Oh yes, no, I know that one.
It's like
yeah,
a fairly big thing. And it's like people are so disgusted by people actually just singing in songs rather than growling and screaming that there's a website dedicated to just listening to just growly screaming music, which even for a lot of metal audience, of the metal audience, a lot of them are still not liking the screams. So if I play my parents my music, they're not really into the screamy stuff that my vocalist would do. A lot of people want me to just release instrumental stuff, which I am doing, but they just want to hear the music rather than the screams. I understand how the screaming thing can be offensive, and that is a huge genre tool, isn't it? The scream.
It is, and
what's going on there?
it's interesting because I myself, like all the music that I have released so far, where I've performed vocals, my vocal style is a fry scream vocal. It's
fry scream.
fry scream. So
Meaning, like ice cream. What are you saying? Fry scream.
fry is it's a type of screaming technique.
Fry. I like that.
Yeah. So it's utilizing, a certain vocal technique.
Yep.
But the interesting thing to note is the way that I do my scream vocal compared to, for instance, your vocalist, and the way that they sound is very, very polarizing.
Yes.
But there's a lot of people who would listen to it and think that they both sound exactly the same.
There's people out there who go, the thing about metal is it all sounds the same. And, couldn't be further from the truth when you compare it to pop music.
No, but then again, you've also got, I've had a lot of people mention that because I spent a lot of time when I was learning how to do my style of scream vocal to make sure that my diction and my pronunciation when it came to the way that my vocals were actually heard was very, very focused, because I knew that a well-known thing for a long time, and it's not so true now thanks to a lot of things involving technology and the reality now that people have been screaming in vocals now for a long period of time, so there's a lot more, not more knowledge. It's no longer frowned upon, funnily enough, from a medical perspective. Because a lot of people,
as long as you're doing it right. I mean, there's people who actually train you to do it without damaging your vocals.
Exactly, and the reality is it's far more accessible now. But in the past, it was well known that a lot of people were not able to actually understand any of the lyrics that were being.
They still can't, Zach. They still can't. There's so many. There's
so many of them. You can't. A lot of them you can, though.
I get it. I mean,
a great one. A great example of a popular vocalist who only does aggressive vocals.
Yeah.
And you can really understand what he's saying is Winston from Parkway Drive. Mm-hmm. He's got great clarity.
I do hear it now and then coming into the mainstream a little bit, where you have who am I thinking of? Who are your really big metal bands? I mean, mainstream wise.
I mean, obviously Slipknot is one, but we touched on them before.
Who am I thinking? Bring Me the Horizon.
Bring Me the Horizon are a very, very large
You'll
example.
hear them on the radio.
Yeah.
You'll get them on the main radio stations every now and then, and they're screaming away. And
they're not screaming anyway anymore.
Really? Okay.
No. So they've changed dramatically now. They're much more of a dance pop band.
It got in there. It's more well known. Doesn't the screaming all come from Mongolian throat singing?
I don't know.
I think the roots are there. I think
maybe probable. Yeah.
So, and we all, most of us descend from Genghis Khan.
There's a lot of people that do. I mean, he got around.
He got around, didn't he?
He did. Yeah.
I'm not going to go too much into that. But fascinating stuff. Maybe we should do a podcast on that guy. That is fascinating stuff. But I just want to go back to the whole no clean singing thing. Can you imagine just imagine being so elitist that you don't want to hear, like you're really angered by the fact that someone would actually use their vocal cords to sing the normal way. Like, I mean, without growling.
Well,
what a way to think how much good music there is out there with just normal singing. And these people are just, no, I'm not having it, pushing it away. I'm not having that. I'm not listening to that.
I think
they're anti-singing.
People will do what they want to do, but it is a very small a section of music that you're limiting yourself to, if that's what you choose to do.
I just honestly, I feel as I get older as well, I just feel everyone could do to open their minds a little bit more and just try go around the buffet, try some stuff. You know, there's more than just your metal out there. There's a lot of things. Everything borrows from each other. Every genre's got its own voice, and they're all crossing over.
I mean,
get amongst it, man.
I mean, you don't want to be going out to the pub and having a chicken parma every night. You know, sometimes you want a pie, sometimes you feel like you want a stir fry. You know, it's just, you just don't need to actually sit there and have square meals all the time.
Sometimes, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
you want to get a plate with a bit of everything on there.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? You want to mix that stuff up. Sometimes it doesn't work.
That's right. I mean, if you get pasta and soup on a bowl, it's probably not going to work that well for you, but
yeah, probably not. Well, I mean, you know, we digress. I think probably a great time to have some wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It sounds like a bit of a hot tip time. So, Andy, with that, let's cue that tune.
Cue the jingle.
All right, hit it. Are you finding that your vocalist is very sibilant? There's a lot of S's going on in the studio. Well, here's a hot tip. Put a pen or a pencil across your microphone, straight across the center. Attach it with some tape, and voila, you've got your own manual de-esser.
All right, guys. Well, I think it's time to probably wrap this one up a little bit and then maybe do a Q&A after if you're feeling up to it, Zach.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've been going on for about an hour or so now, and well, that's enough of people listening to our voices, let's be real.
Oh, God, yeah. Do you want to say a little bit on your feelings of the whole genre thing? The question was, are genres necessary?
I think the short answer is, are genres necessary? No, genres aren't necessary. Are genres useful? Yes, I would say that genres are useful, especially when it comes to a way for you to find inspiration if you're thinking about trying to get different emotions. If you want something aggressive, there's a lot of different genres of heavy music. If you want something melodic, there's a lot of instrumental music, a lot of classical, and
it's a way to categorize things, catalog things.
And go into something if you're specifically looking for something to
God,
obtain.
Jack, can you imagine Spotify if there was no... Can you imagine just any kind of music store with just the albums?
Yeah.
Do music stores still exist? They're not for long probably, but
I mean, that's a whole different thing.
But can you imagine just trying to find something you're into if you're quite... narrow-minded about, and I don't mean narrow-minded in a negative sense.
Narrow-minded might not necessarily
if you're really into rock and roll, let's say you just love a bit of Elvis, you want to find something like Elvis,
yeah.
And what are you going to search for? How are you going to find it?
You're going to go search for artists similar to Elvis, or
you probably need it,
or rock and roll, or something like that. But it's interesting to say that I wouldn't necessarily say you're narrow-minded if you want to go and look and listen to a punk song. You might just go, oh, well, I really feel like listening to some punk right now, and I don't want to listen to somebody that I've listened to before, so I'm just going to search on Spotify for something like that.
Narrow-minded is the wrong word, I guess. But
if it's just what you desire. But are genres necessary? No. Are they useful? Yes. But I feel that, there's more to it than just that. What about you, Andy? What are genres necessary, Andy Gillion?
I would say that it's not so much that we've invented genres. It's a natural occurrence.
Yeah.
That people are going to categorize things in that way. It's kind of an afterthought, I think. Nobody, like I said, I don't think, let's take Bach. I don't think Bach was necessarily writing his tunes. Bach, come on. It's not tunes, but pieces of music and saying, I'm a Baroque composer. No, I'm sure that was named afterwards. And same with, when metal first came out, I don't think the composers themselves are calling it that and trying to stick to that themselves necessarily. It's just a natural progression. It's what happens. I think really interesting to discuss that it's not all about the music. So categorizing the music, there's a lot more to it than just the notes. Okay, you're talking about attitude. You're talking about humans, the human kind of political agenda. Identity is all wrapped up there. Just who you are,
the emotions behind it.
Emotions, what messages make you tick, where you belong, the community you feel you belong to. All I'll say is, I really encourage people to just broaden their horizons a bit, especially if you're a composer. You can learn so much from just delving into other genres of music you're not familiar with, having a go at writing other things, borrowing from genres. That's how music evolves.
There's a whole thing involving, touching on that, thinking about how, imposter syndrome, so to speak, as a composer. Some people have a very negative outlook on that, but it's
imposter syndrome for the audience being that is a thing where you feel like you're not good at what you're doing, even though you're very good at what you're doing,
or you're mimicking what other artists are doing. But imposter syndrome is a great way for you. Mimicking other artists is a great way for you to eventually find your own sound within the styles of music that you enjoy. But I think a key thing to take away is, are genres necessary? No. Are they useful? Yes. But I think the message that we both sort of really want to convey is that the most important thing to do is actually to open your mind to the fact that if you like specific genres, chances are there are a lot of other music, there's a lot of other genres and a lot of other styles and things of music out there that you really enjoy that you have yet to discover. And maybe this is a great chance for you to go out there and actually try and listen to some. And hopefully you'll find something that you really like. And if you don't, well, then you can send us an email and tell us that we suck. Yeah, pretty much.
We're going to get those emails anyway, Zach.
Well, I know. I mean, that's going to happen.
It's going to happen, or it is happening. So look, we can probably wrap it there.
Yeah.
Open your minds. Listen to some new music. Stop being an idiot and just hating on other genres of music, man. Life's too short.
It is.
Just enjoy what's out there. Good music spans all genres. It does not matter. Also, it's all completely personal, subjective. Don't even listen to us. Go flip it round.
This is just an opinion that we've generated as well. You know? We could be very
Download
wrong.
this podcast and delete it
straight away
in protest.
Yeah.
And then form a punk band because you're going against the grain and all that.
Or don't form a punk band because that could be your way of being...
that could be a way of rebelling against... Yeah.
Exactly. And on that note, we're going to finish up this now and we're going to hit off and do some Q&A.
Yeah, let's do it.
And then, that'll be the end.
Awesome. Let's hit the jingle for Q&A, Zach. Let's do it.
Zach and Andy Q&A. Ask a question.
Alrighty, we're back, and it's time for a little bit of Q&A.
Q&A.
To wrap this episode up.
All right, Andy, what is the question? Hit me.
I got a few questions.
One at a time, chill.
We're going to run through this pretty quick. First one from Caroline Chedji in the United Kingdom.
Chedji?
Yeah, actually, she's a close friend of mine.
Oh, awesome.
And oh my God, I think she's having a baby today. I really need to message her.
You do. That's incredible.
What day is it?
Today
Monday.
is the 10th of June.
What day? I think she's having a baby. I'll call her after the thing.
Yeah.
Okay, dude, what is the meaning of life?
Well, we know the answer to that one. It's 42.
Sex.
Sex?
No. Okay, meaning of life for me.
For you?
I would have to say...
Well, obviously it's sex. You just said that.
Let's move on. The next question is from... my God. Okay, so a guy called, or a girl called Fescan1 with no profile picture, so a little bit dubious on this one.
Okay.
But thanks for sending this one in, Fescan1.
Sick.
What were your main influences this is directed at me for writing albums for Mors Principium S, my band. Well, I'll answer, and then you can answer what your main influences are. So specifically for writing for my metal band, I would have to say main influences are going to be pretty specific genre-wise. See what I did there? Tied it in with the theme of the show. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah.
So you're talking Melodeath. You're talking, my God, you're talking previous Mors Principium S stuff. Sticking to it. In Flames, Children of Bodom. My God, influences from everywhere. Classical music.
A lot of
classical music for me.
Would you say video games a bit too?
All video game music's been a huge influence my whole life. Way back, you're talking about Metallica, and even bands like Protest the Hero, and a lot of good shit, and a lot of virtuoso guitarists get thrown in. A lot of good lead guitar work for me in terms of inspiration. How about yourself, Zach?
Well, I've written music for 4 different bands. 4 massive different genre differences between them, but I'll just stick to the current one at the moment.
Go for it.
Color and Shade, plug. But yeah, I Color and Shade's a bit of an interesting one because we are a bit of a multi-genre band.
Color and Shade. I mean, right there, you've got you got a dichotomy of ideals,
which is exactly the whole point in terms of the way that we actually label the name of the band. The influences for me are very heavily influences in bands like in post-hardcore. I'm talking bands like Saosin, Chiodos, Pierce the Veil was a lot of the influences back sort of the earlier way of when I was starting to write. Then you've got bands like Our Last Night, who have a lot of pop stuff going on in terms of the vocal melodies. Bands like A Day to Remember.
You guys are not afraid to bring in a bit of the pop.
Not at all, not at all. Yeah, but then we go, on the other scale of things, I've got a lot of influence for some heavier kind of stuff. Funnily enough, I actually had a bit of influence from, some of the heavier stuff in The Word Alive, and also some heavier stuff in some influence from... some of the heavier sides of this band, Beartooth, right here. And then...
Plug.
Yeah. Plug for them. But I guess the point is... And also a lot of the more aggressive stuff, especially in the way that I did my vocals, from bands like August Burns Red and Converge, and some of the more sort of like... bands like the Ghost Inside, especially, in making sure that there was a lot of like really, really cool rhythmic stuff going on in the vocal delivery and all of that, and just making it nice and heavy. But I think the main thing to note is that, with my music, I just don't really ever let myself just stick to the same thing. I mean, I'll sit down and I'll be watching a movie and I'll listen to the music that comes on from the film company at the start of the song, at the start of the movie.
Guilty of that too.
And I'll listen to that and I'll be like,
the one to listen for is Studio Canal. Oh my God, are you serious?
Yes.
What the fuck?
I love that so much.
Dude,
it is
what
the
is
best.
that? I've literally been watching a movie that comes on and I'm like, I'll pause the movie, record that on my phone, and then go and write some intro for a song.
I have come up with ideas for 3 songs.
Dude, I wish we could
thing.
play this. Guys, try and dig out a DVD. A Studio Canal.
Yeah.
It comes on at the start, and if I remember rightly, it's something like there's a little flute, there's like a little pixie flute thing going on. Something like that. And then it's like, and then it does some big thing, there's a big swoopy crescendo.
And then there's a nice crescendo, and it has a little soft bit at the end as well.
It's just wonderful. Check that out, guys. I'm going to wrap this up quickly. You've touched on a load of bands.
I have.
But the other question from the same dude, thank you, or gal, don't know, important gender equality and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously though, top 5 fucking bands. I don't know if I can do it. I'm just going to name some big influences for me. And
go.
First and foremost, Michael Jackson, all the classical, Chopin, although he was more Renaissance, whatever. Beethoven, Mozart, those kind of classical composers. Then you're talking metal. Lead guitar playing for me, Vinnie Moore is the man. Gary Moore is the man. So much influence from those guys.
Is that 5 already?
That's probably 5.
Go one more. Just do it. Quick.
5. The band 5. Fuck it. What band 5? What songs have they got?
Well,
Five will make you get
up,
down. Didn't we
singing.
try?
Yeah.
I've almost blew my voice out trying to do an Arnie impression for the start of this podcast. You probably heard it. And
He was singing it in 5.
what was I doing?
Yeah.
Arnie,
Everybody.
yeah, everybody get down. We're going off topic.
Yeah, we are. All right.
You hit me up with a few of your favorite, most inspirational artists, Zach.
Well, my number one band, which is a very nice contrast from a lot of the music that I write, but is a big basis of why I started playing rhythm guitar and focusing on it like the way that I do, is my favorite band is by far the Deftones, who are an incredible band.
Really, your favorite band?
Favorite band
right.
by far is the Deftones. I love Chino, Stefan, and the boys. And
Well,
I
sorry,
can't-
you're speaking like you know these guys.
Well,
You
I don't.
you know
I
these
wish
guys?
I did, but I
Yeah?
don't. No.
Okay.
No. I love Deftones. Another great influence for me, especially when I started getting into guitar, was the Living End, an Australian band. Very much a really good example of a band utilizing modern rock and roll and rockabilly in really cool ways.
Rockabilly.
Rockabilly, yeah, which is
I haven't heard that word in a long time.
Awesome stuff.
Bring that back.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
Another big band for me, funnily enough, I've touched on them a bit, is A Day to Remember.
Yeah, you've got a lawsuit for that, haven't you? Touching on those guys, or no?
That's too far.
Okay, keep going.
And another big one for me would be the guys in Beartooth.
Which I should probably hear because you're always going on about those guys.
really get stuck into them.
Yeah, man.
And I'm going to round this one off and say that the last one for me is going to be Killswitch Engage.
Yeah, man. Big kind of teenage metalcore influence there for sure.
Yeah,
for so
I
many
mean, look,
people.
I'm going to probably just be like a little bit sneaky, and I'm going to say Killswitch Engage / Parkway Drive. Very different
Can't
bands.
do that. It's against
Can
the
do
rules.
it. I'm doing it. And with that, that's
Holy
the end of
shit!
Q&A.
No, that's rebellious, man.
I know.
You should be a punk and or blues player.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I
man.
guess I'll see how I go. And with
all
that,
right.
I think that's the end. I think that we
You say that with such vigor and a feeling of what's the relief that this is over, Zach. Did you not have a good time?
I had a great time, Andy. I got to drink lots of tea. I got to hang with you. It's been a good time. Fist bump.
It always is, bro. Yeah, that's episode 2 done. I'm pretty sure we'll come back for a few more of these. So
We will.
I don't know if anyone's getting anything out of this, but I just want to say Q&A is going to happen every time. You can ask us anything you like. If you're watching this on YouTube, chuck a comment down there. I'm not going to give you the whole spiel. Like, comment, and fucking subscribe, yo, and hit that fucking bell and all that shit. Just fucking do what you want. Do you know what I'm saying?
Unagi.
I'm not going to tell these guys what to do.
Yeah, we'll also be. You can also, answer or throw some questions in on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Yeah, it's
We'll
going to
make
be
that all-
everywhere. Just let us know what you want us to answer.
Or send us an email. We'll have an email. We'll have our email
I'll
up
sort
as
the email
well.
out. And
yeah, I think that's
it's been a pleasure. We will not ramble any longer. You get to hear us same time next week. I don't know. We'll probably shoot a bunch of these and ping them out once a week, something like that. I've got to call my friend about that baby.
You do.
All right, guys, thanks so much for hanging out. If you did, well, you must have, I don't know if you just saw the end of it or something. It'd be weird if you skipped to the end.
Alrighty.
Zach, stay safe, mate.
All right, stay fresh, Andy.
Yeah, man. I'll see you next week. Cheers, guys.
Done.